Hello everybody, this is Dr. Vishal Trivedi from Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Guwahati. And what we were discussing about the different chapter related to your biology course for the class 11 and 12 under the IIT PAL program. In this series, we were discussing about the biotechnology principle and processes. And while we were discussing about this chapter in the previous few lectures, we discussed about the genetic engineering and how the genetic engineering is allowing to generate the genetically modified organism. So to explore the different processes, what is responsible for generating the genetically modified organism. In the previous two lectures, we discussed about the isolation of genomic DNA as well as the polymerase chain reactions. And in the previous lecture, we also discussed about the restriction digestion as well as the ligations. So in today's lecture, we are going to start our discussion with the preparation of the competent cells, and we also going to discuss about the transformations. So the transformation is a process by which the DNA is being delivered into the host cells, and the transformation is actually going to lead to the cells to take up the DNA, and that's how the cell is going to be used for further downstream applications. Now, once you got the chimeric DNA, you have to deliver this DNA into the host of your choice, and that you have to do simply by preparing a competent cells, and in this case in the bacterial as a host you have to do the transformations. So let's discuss about that. So the transformations. So transformation is a delivery of DNA into the bacteria, and transformation is being discovered where the DNA is being transferred from one bacterial species to another bacterial species, and that's how the transformation was found to be a causative agent, which is or the mechanism through which the bacteria are actually transferring the resistance from one bacteria to another bacteria. So you can imagine that what is mean by the transformation is that you have a bacteria which contains the DNA, and then what is this donor cell is doing, and donor cell is resistant. For example, if this is resistance against a antibiotic like ampicillin, so what this donor cell is doing is it is actually throwing the DNA, which is actually conferring the resistance of this donor cell against the ampicillin, and then these DNA molecules are being taken by the donor cells. So donor cell was sensitive in the beginning, but afterwards the acceptor cell has taken this DNA, and that's how the acceptor cell also acquired the resistance, and that's why the people have discovered the concept of transformations. There is a classical experiments. I think you might have seen this experiment before also, which is being performed by the Frederick Griffith in the year 1928, and that's how he has discovered the concept of the transformations. So what he has done is he has taken the two different types of strain: the live strain, live sense, the live so the virulent strain and the avirulent strain. So what he has done, he has taken the Streptococcus pneumoniae strains, so virulent strain, the S strain, or the avirulent strain or the R strain. So avirulent strains are incapable of causing the disease, whereas the virulent strains or the S strain are competent enough to cause the disease. So what he has done is he has taken the virulent strain, he has injected those strain to the mice, and that's how the mice is dead, because these mice have developed the disease actually. So in the other way, it has taken the R strain, which is a virulent strain. He has injected those to the mice, and the mice were not causing the disease. Then the third one is that where he has actually heat killed the virulent strain, the S strain, and then also the mice was not it was not causing the disease to the mice, and that's how the mice was surviving. In the fourth experiment, what he has done is he has taken a non-virulent live strain and he has taken the heat-killed virulent strains. So he has heat-killed the virulent strain. So that's how ideally the mice should not get the disease. And then he has mixed these two bacteria and he has injected that to the mice. And what happened at the end? The mice is dead. Why the mice is dead? Because the DNA from the virulent strain has gone to the non-virulent strain, and now the non-virulent strain has acquired the characteristic of a virulent strain. So virulent strain is dead, but the DNA is still be intact. So that's why the DNA is gone into the a virulent strain, and that's how the A virulent strain become the virulent strain, and that's how when he injected those to the mice, these mice have developed the disease, and that's how the mice have been killed. So because of these four different types of strains, the Frederick Griffiths had discovered the idea that the DNA is being transferred from the one bacterial species to another bacterial species, and that's how it has transformed the a virulent strain to a virulent strain, and that's how he has given the concept of the transformations. Now, if you want to do the DNA delivery in a host, you have to work on the two aspects. One, you have to take care of the DNA part, which means the DNA is a charged molecule, so charges on the DNA is negative, and this negative charge is always interfering into the delivery of the DNA into the host cells, and that has to be modulated so that the cells should actually be able to take up this DNA. The other thing is it has to also work with the surface chemistry of the host cells. So host cell surface chemistry will either attract or repel DNA as a result of opposite or similar charges. The presence of cell wall in the case of bacteria causes additional physical barrier to take up and entry of DNA. And because of this, you have to prepare a competent cell which actually should be able to overcome or should be able to change its surface chemistry in such a way so that it should be able to attract the DNA and it should be able to take up this particular DNA where you have actually modulated the charge also. There are multiple ways in which you can be able to prepare the competent cell as well as the prokaryotic cell is concerned. So these are the different types of strains and these are the different treatment what you can do. For example, Streptococcus pneumoniae, you can actually, if you treat the bacterial cell with mitomycin C or fluoroquinol, that actually is going to convert these bacteria into a competent bacteria, and then they will be able to take up the DNA when you add DNA into the external media. Similarly, B. subtilis, Helicobacter, and all these, and E. coli. For E. coli, you can use the two method, either the calcium chloride method or the rubidium chloride method. What you have to do when you are preparing the competent cells? The preparation of competent cell is bacteria is incubated with a divalent cation, for example, the calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, or the rubidium chloride for 30 minutes at 4 degrees Celsius. And during this process, the cell wall of treated bacteria is swelled and it gathered the factor required for the intake of DNA docked onto the plasma membrane, which means if you have a bacteria and if you treat it with the like calcium chloride, so if you treat it with the divalent calcium, you are actually bringing a lot of factors onto the cell surface, and these factors are actually, you know, binding the DNA, or it is actually allowing the docking of the DNA. And once the DNA will dock onto the cell surface, it is being taken up inside, and once the DNA will inside, it is actually going to express the gene, because this is the bacteria where the everything is present with the cellular machinery is present within the cytosol as well. The only thing is these cells are very fragile, so they have to be stored at very nicely. There should certification speeds should be very small, and you can store it at -80 with the help of the glycerol, and the pipetting has to be done very nicely for these cells. How you can be able to prepare the or you can be able to perform the transformations? What you have to do is first you have to grow the particular type of bacteria. So in this case, for example, we are taking the E. coli cells. So you have to first grow the E. coli cell up to the log phase, and then you have to transfer it to the cold calcium chloride solutions in an ice bucket. Right. So this is the first step. First, you grow the bacteria up to the log phase, then you treat it with the cold calcium chloride. Then what you have to do is, so your competent cells are now ready, right? Then you have to add the appropriate DNA. Like for example, in this case, we are adding the ampicillin resistant plasmid to this particular DNA, and then you incubate on on ice for 30 minutes. During this time, the bacteria will take up the DNA, and the DNA will be docked onto the cell surface. Like so, DNA will be present onto the cell surface. Now after that, what you do is you give the heat shock. So once you give the heat shock at 42 degrees Celsius for 90 seconds, the competent cells will take up this bacteria and they will get transformed. So once you heat up and you will heat up for some time, there will be an expansion of the plasma membrane. So there will be an expansion of plasma membrane, and because of that, there will be hole going to form, and this hole is actually going to allow the DNA which is docked onto the surface will be inside onto the bacteria. After this, you actually going to allow the bacteria to recover from these damages. So you keep it in a 37 degrees Celsius for some time, and then you plate it onto a agar plate containing the appropriate antibiotic. For example, in this case, we are using the ampicillin. So ampicillin is going to kill the cells which are lacking the ampicillin resistance gene, which means the cells which have not taken up the DNA, but it will allow the growth of those cells which are actually been taken up the DNA. And then you incubate on in an incubator at 37 degrees Celsius for 16 to 20 hours. And after that, what you're going to see is you're going to see the bacterial colonies on top of this particular plates. So this is a very simple process, and to give you a real experience, I would like to take you to my lab where the students are actually going to explain each and every these steps, and so that it will actually give you the idea how to perform the transformations. Once you have done with the transformations, the DNA is going to be delivered to the particular bacterial cell. But you can imagine that if I am taking the 100 bacterial cells, it may not be possible that the DNA will go into all those 100 DNA all those 100 bacterial cells. So that's why there is a requirement that we should be able to screen these cells, either the bacteria which has taken up the DNA or the bacteria which has not taken up the DNA. So for the screening, there are multiple tools what people can use to screen the transformed bacteria from the untransformed bacteria. For example, in this case, we have put the screening criteria, and that's how the blue colored cells, which are non-transformed bacteria, is not growing onto the this particular plate. So there are multiple way in which you can be able to screen the recombinant clones. You can have the enzymes. So this is a typical plasmid what you can use in your cloning reactions. So what you see here is you have a LAGZ promoters and you have a LAGZ gene. So that actually is going to give you the criteria to screen by the enzymes. Then what you see here is that you have the ampicillin resistance genes. So that is actually going to give you a criteria to use as an antibiotic resistance genes. And then sometimes it also gives the criteria to use by the phenotypic changes. So either you use the enzymes or you use the antibiotics or the phenotypic changes. Which, for example, in the case of enzyme, you can do some reactions. So in that case, what will happen is the transformed cells are going to give you the color, or the non-transformed cells is, so that's how you actually can perform some reactions, and since the enzyme is present, it is actually going to give you the reactions. For example, in the case of antibiotic resistant genes, because if you are cloning a gene into this particular fragment, this gene is not going to be functional when it is present in the recombinant DNA, right? So in that case, what will happen is that uh, the if you plate it onto the antibiotic resistant genes, the transformed bacteria, which actually is going to have this functional antibiotic resistant gene, is going to grow, whereas the untransformed bacteria is not going to grow. Similarly, there are other phenotypic changes also which can be used as a criteria. So this is all about the screening of recombinant clones. Once you have screened the recombinant clone, then you can be able to use these recombinant clone or the bacterial colonies for the protein productions. So let's see how you can be able to use them for the protein productions. So you can have the recombinant DNA, which where you might have put the DNA under the cloning vector or to the expression vectors. So in the cloning vector, if you put, you can be able to use that for understanding the different types of the molecular processes, whether it is for the mechanism of transcription or replication, or sometimes you also can use the cloning vector for the preparation of genomic as well as the cDNA library. But if you have put the DNA into an expression vector, then you can study the mechanism of translation, or you can use that for the protein productions. So let's see how you can be able to use these bacteria or for the protein productions. So protein production is a very complex process. So just briefly discuss, I will discuss about the protein production so that it will be easy for you to follow how to perform the protein productions. So in a typical gene, what you have is you have a promoter, you have the coding sequence, which is called as the gene, and then you have the termination sequence. So what happens is the RNA polymerase goes and sit onto the promoter. While it is running from this direction to this direction, it synthesizes the corresponding RNA, and then this RNA is going to be bound by the ribosomes, and that's how the ribosome will read the information what is present into the messenger RNA corresponding to this particular gene, and that's how it is actually going to start synthesizing the polypeptide. And once this polypeptide is being synthesized, this polypeptide is going to be folded, and it is actually going to give you the folded protein, which can be a structural protein or can be an enzymatic protein. So this is a protein production is a multi-step process, and in an overview of these steps are all as follows. The binding of RNA polymerase to the promoter element to start the transcription to form the messenger RNA. As soon as the messenger RNA is synthesized, a translational machinery starts the synthesis of the protein. The protein synthesis starts usually at the start codon AUG and ends at the stop codon UAE, UGA or UAG. In the bacteria, transcription and translation occurs simultaneously, whereas the translation starts as soon as the messenger RNA comes out from the RNA polymerase. So this is all about an overview of how the protein synthesis machinery works inside the bacteria. But when the practicality is concerned, you have to use the multiple steps in getting the protein synthesis done. What are these steps? First is you have to first choose the host strain. For example, either I should use the bacterial species, I will use the yeast, animal or the plant. That depends on the transforming agents. That depends on the what kind of vector you have taken. If the vector is a plasmid, then you can use the prokaryotic species, because if you remember, every vector has its cognate pair with the host strain. For example, if I am using the yeast vectors, I can use the yeast as a host species. If I am using the mammalian expression vectors, I can use the mammalian cells. If I am using the plant expression vectors, I can use the plant cells. So depending on the transforming agent and the source of the DNA, you can be able to use the corresponding host species. Once you have selected the host species, for example, in this case, I have taken an example from the E. coli expression vectors. First thing is you have to first generate the recombinant DNA. So that we have already discussed. Then what you have to do is you have to do the transformations, and then you are going to get the transformed bacteria. So what you see here is that the bacteria has a lot of colonies. Now what you have to do is you have to take the single colony and you have to inoculate that into a media. So you can take the media and inoculate that and put it onto the cotton plug, and then you keep it in a 37 degrees Celsius incubator with a 180 RPM, and while it is shaking, the bacteria will grow. Once the bacteria will reach to a OD of 0.6, for example, then you can actually induce the protein production with the help of an inducer, which is called as the IPTG or the isopropyl thiogalactoside. Once you add the IPTG, it is actually going to induce the RNA polymerase to sit onto the promoter, and that's how it is actually going to start forming the messenger RNA. As soon as the messenger RNA is formed, and the E. coli is a prokaryotic system, the translation also will start, and that's how the protein production will start as soon as you add this inducer, which is called as the isopropyl thiogalactoside. That is actually going to generate the proteins. This protein is going to be present inside the cell. Then what you have to do is you have to centrifuge the cells, and that's how it is actually going to give you the bacterial pellet. And from the bacterial pellet, you can just take some amount and you can add it and run it onto a SDS page, and that actually is going to tell you whether there will be a production of protein or not. For example, in this case, these are the control cells where you have not added the IPTG, and these are the cell where you have added the IPTG. And you can see that there is an enhanced protein production in the case of the IPTG added cell, whereas there is no production in the case of control cells. So this is all about the expression of a particular protein under the laboratory conditions. When and why we are saying this into a laboratory production, because these are where here we are using a very small volumes, but if you want to do the same production at the industrial level, you have to first study the microbial kinetics, as well as first you also have to study how the protein production is being influenced by the multiple types of factors. So this is a typical microbial kinetics, where you have the lag phase, the log phase, the stationary phase, as well as the death phase. So what you have to do is, and these are the instruments what you require to prepare the media as well as the growth. What you see here is this is a autoclave, where you can actually autoclave the media so that it is very sterile, and then you can inoculate the bacteria of your choice, and that's how this is the prepared media in a flask, and this is the cultured media. So what happens is, when you are actually growing the bacteria, it will following a particular pattern where you have the lag phase, log phase, stationary phase, as well as the death phase. Log phase is a phase where the bacteria is preparing themselves or adjusting themselves for this particular media conditions. Then once it get adjusted, then it will start doubling at a rate of in a log phase or the exponential growth phase. So every bacteria, one will become 2 and 2 become 4 and all that. But once it do that, it is actually going to eat up all the nutrients what is present in the media, and that's how it will enter into the stationary phase. And after the stationary phase, there will be a complete removal of the media component, and that's why the bacteria will start dying. Now what you have to do is, why we are doing this microbial growth kinetics, because you have to study the protein production at every stage, whether it is in the lag phase, log phase, stationary phase, or the death phase. And at every phase, you have to see what will be the protein production level. Apart from that, during these phases, you are also going to see that there will be multiple factors what is going to be changed. For example, there will be a change in pH of the media, there will be change in the oxygen level of the media, there will be a change in the carbon dioxide level, and there will be a change of accumulation of multiple types of the side products. So these factors are actually going to affect the bacterial growth, as well as the production of the protein, as well as the other metabolites from the cell. And that's why it is important, when you take up this into the industrial scale, all these factors has to be under the precise control. And that is always being done when you are doing the microbial growth as well as the protein production under the control conditions. So when you want to do this under the control conditions, you have to use the bioreactors. For example, in this case, we are using the simple flask. So whatever the oxygen is present in this flask is only the oxygen what is available for the bacteria to be utilized. Similarly, the pH, there's no way that you can be able to regulate the pH in this particular case. And all these factors actually contribute a lot in terms of the controlling the microbial growth, as well as the controlling the production of that particular factor. And that's why all these factors has to be monitored and controlled in a has to be monitored and well as controlled in a controlled fashion, and that you can achieve simply by having a bioreactor. So what is a bioreactor? Bioreactor is a is nothing different but a flask. But in this flask, actually, you are putting a different types of attachment. For example, you are putting an attachment for to monitor the pH. You can put the attachment to monitor the carbon dioxide. You can put an attachment to monitor the the carbon dioxide, oxygen, and you can also attach a factor so that you can be able to even supply the growth media. For example, so that's how the you can have the different types of bioreactors. You can have the stirred tank bioreactors where you can have the the impellers. These impellers are actually going to start mixing the media, and then there will be a foam breakers, because once you mix the media, you're also going to form the froth. For example, you can have the bubbles kind of thing on the top of this particular thing, and once you form the bubbles, it is actually going to stop the entry of oxygen, and that's how the bacteria will not going to get the enough oxygen for its running its metabolism. Apart from that, what you see here is it also has the pH sensor, so it actually maintains the pH of this particular media. If there will be a requirement, if the pH goes down, which means the pH goes into the acidic side, it is actually going to put some amount of base to maintain the pH at 7.4. If the pH goes into the alkaline side, then it will actually going to put the acid. Apart from that, it's also going to maintain the other kinds of parameters. It's also going to keep the steam for sterilization and all that. So that this whole chamber is actually being controlled from outside, and you can be able to do whatever the conditions you want to add. Like for example, you can add the sterile air, you can purge the air into this particular chamber and all that. So this is called as the stirred tank bioreactor, whereas this is called as the sparged stirred tank reactor. So this is another kind of the bioreactor where you can have the more and other kind of flexibility. So this is all about the bioreactors and how the bioreactor is going to help in terms of protein production or the production of metabolite, is that it actually allows the microbes to achieve or to grow under the ideal standard conditions and the conditions where you are going to get the production maximum. So apart from that, once you got the cells, where the product is ready, then you can put them under the downstream processing. So downstream processing means you have to extract the product, and then you have to purify the product, and then you have to get the final product from the cell. So this has a multiple steps. Like this has a step where you can actually have to utilize the different types of cell disruption methods, whether it is a chemical method, like you can use some detergents, and whether it is an enzymatic method where you can actually use the enzyme called lysozyme. So if you put the lysozyme, it is actually going to lyse the bacteria, right, E. coli. Then you can use the mechanical method. So mechanical method means you can use the homogenizers. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with the homogenizers, but homogenizer is like a the grinders what you have in your home. Like for example, the mixie or the mixer grinder what you have in your home. And the physical method, like you can actually add the water, like so you can have the hypotonic lysis or you can have the thermal lysis. So all these methods you can use for cell disruption. So once you do the cell disruption, you are actually going to get a crude extract, like you're going to have the mixture of different products. After that, you have to do the different types of purifications, like you can have the solid liquid extractions, or you can have the liquid extractions and all that. And then in this extraction procedure, you might have to do centrifugation, extraction, and filtrations. After that, it is actually going to you have to concentrate the samples so that you can do simply by evaporation, ultrafiltration, and precipitations. And once you do the concentration of your purified product, then you can actually do the purifications. For purification, you use the chromatography. So depending on the product, you can use the different types of chromatography. You can use the ion exchange chromatography. You can use the hydrophobic interaction chromatography. You can use the gel filtration chromatography, or you can use the affinity chromatography. And you can use the reverse phase chromatography as well. Once you are done with this purification, then you are going to get the final product. And this final product can be used for multiple purposes. For example, this product can be used to develop the vaccines. This product can be a therapeutic molecule. So product can be directly be taken up by the humans, for example, the insulin, and so on. So this is all about the biotechnology principle and processes, where we have discussed about the genetic engineering. We discussed in detail about how to generate the genetically modified organisms, either utilizing the different types of tools, and these tools are being used under the different types of processes, like genomic DNA isolations, the PCR, the transformation, the cell screening, and ultimately we have also discussed about the how the protein production works. Apart from that, we very briefly discuss about the bioprocess engineering, where we have discussed about the different types of bioreactors, and we also have discussed how you can be able to do the optimization of the product as well as the purification of the product. So with this, I would like to conclude my lecture here, and in the so I hope you might have enjoyed the whole content and you might have understood the topics. And with this, I would like to conclude my lecture here. Thank you.